also people like Omar Abdullah, who has won elections which have been considered to some extent free and fair. So you've got to involve people like Omar Abdullah, you've got to involve Mehbooba Mufti and her party and the Hurriyat. So you've got to have all spectrums of representation involved in the talks. Trade, of course, is one issue which I think both sides haven't done enough on. I mean, I can go to shops in Islamabad and I can find Indian products which are available, which are being sold, but they're being brought in from Dubai. And let me tell you, the markup is something like 150%, maybe even more. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The same product could be easily traded between the two countries. There are natural resources. There are products that Pakistan has, which I'm telling you, would have a ready market in India. But the point is, we've got to such a stage that there are so many kinds of barriers. Aziz Saab referred to the tariff barriers. There are other issues. I mean, when we started the onion trade earlier this year, there was all sorts of mess-ups and all sorts of things happening. And ultimately the onion trade stopped within about a fortnight. So these are issues that the two sides have to get down to hammering out. You've got to, I mean, we have these constant rows about Pakistani traders complaining that India hasn't been supplying enough cotton, which they had contracted for. These are the kind of issues that have to be taken up in the talks, and these are the smaller issues on which you can hammer out agreements, build down things, and then go back to the people and sell them. I think governments on both sides need agreements that they can sell to the people so that they can get to work on the more serious issues like Kashmir. Start with the smaller stuff, and it will probably be easier to address the bigger stuff. It's also surprising that, as we get down to another round of talks, there is virtually no mention of Afghanistan in the talks. Whether we like it or not, Afghanistan has become a huge issue in this region. It's an issue for both India and Pakistan. Both sides have suspicions about each other's roles in Afghanistan. And I think it's a bit surprising that there is no mention of Afghanistan in the composite, whatever dialogue. I mean, it's been called the full spectrum of dialogue, the composite dialogue plus. We've got to have some sort of an interface to discuss Afghanistan, because if you don't discuss Afghanistan, the suspicions that both sides have about each other are going to remain. And that's why we're going to have these reports in the Pakistani media about 20 consulates and 25 consulates and things like that, which is nowhere near the correct figure of Indian consulates. And I mean, people are going to go on trading allegations. Aziz Saab also brought up the issue of terrorism, which is a very, very focused issue for India right now. It's something that India has been insisting on. And I think the Mumbai attacks was possibly an opportunity where both sides missed an opportunity to do greater work on terrorism. I mean, a lot of people have not mentioned this, and I've made this point several times while talking to people here, and I think we should go on making this point. This was the first time that Pakistani authorities actually arrested people on the basis of information provided by India. There were investigations done in Pakistan on the basis of information that was exchanged by the two sides. But then it just came down to a sort of almost pointless sort of an exchange of dossiers by last year. I mean, I don't know, I've probably lost count. I think we've exchanged something like 20 dossiers or so. There is a need to have some sort of an interface between the security agencies. We had this thing called the GATM, and then we had the CBI and the FIA chiefs interacting under the composite dialogue, but that obviously is not working. There has to be an interface where, I mean, if the militaries can have hotlines, why aren't the intelligence and security agencies on both sides exploring the possibility of having a hotline? You need something like that to ensure that the talks are insulated from any other incident of terrorism. Shutting down talks and not kind of having any sort of interface in the aftermath of any kind of a terrorist attack is not going to help both the sides. there is a need to talk, especially on terrorism, but I mean, I don't know if the way we are going about it is right. Coming back to the point of visas and people-to-people exchange, that's probably one of the most neglected areas. I mean, there's been virtually no kind of, sustained, extensive people-to-people contacts. I mean, you do have delegations of journalists, delegations of parliamentarians visiting each site, but that doesn't really lead to, exchanges between the Aam Aadmi, the Aam Janta on both sides. Believe me, I mean, I think this is also probably true for the Pakistani journalists who are based in Delhi, but one of the most frustrating things for an Indian journalist is the number of requests you get from people for, helping out with the visa. And we do try our best, but things have come down to such a stage that even when we, refer people to the High Commission, it isn't easy getting a visa. I think today the waiting period is something like 45 days for an Indian visa. And there have been occasions when people have had real emergencies wanting to go to India or to come to Pakistan. I mean, people with relatives in India wanting to rush to India to maybe see an ailing relative or to visit an elderly relative. And believe me, it's really frustrating, and it's also painful to see when they don't get visas. These are the issues where, visas, there has to be some sort of work done by the two sides. Genuine cases, elderly people, the ailing, maybe there's some way we can, we should work out things to ease up the visa situation. And the reason why we need to have an easier visa regime is because the youth on the two sides are hardly interacting. I mean, there are a lot of people in India, a lot of youth who sometimes ask the question. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with them, but a lot of youth are asking, why do we need to talk to Pakistan? I mean, they have this example, they have been saying, they feel that there's been no progress in talks. That's not the right way to go about it, but don't forget that these are the kids who are going to be voting in a few years. And if they have that kind of a thought, it's definitely not going to be easy for the political party, whichever is in power in India. On the other hand, I mean, here, a lot of the youth I have met have this really skewed idea of India from the television serials which seem to be on all cable networks. And believe me, those television serials are not a very realistic depiction of India. I mean, India is not just mother-in-laws and sister-in-laws, I mean, daughter-in-laws. So, I mean, there is a real need to get some sort of a program of young people talking and meeting. I mean, maybe people who are involved in Track 2 can think about some sort of a interface for the younger people from universities and colleges interacting more frequently. And this is something that has to be, built up, it has to be kept going no matter what the difficulties are.